Good morning. Welcome to Elysian Fields. Happy Friday. My name is Becca. I'm one of the family team members here at Elysian Fields, and I'm here with the wonderful Cynthia Higgins. She is not only one of our intuitive readers, but she is also a spiritual life coach, a psychiatrist, a medical provider, a master level energy therapist. The titles can go on and on. But we're here for a very special morning, a very special conversation regarding mental health. It's hard for me to think of anyone in my life and probably yours that hasn't been affected by mental health in some capacity, whether that's a personal experience, someone in their family, someone in their lives. So I think it's a very important conversation to have. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm really delighted to be here.
Wonderful. So I always like to kind of start out. We have kind of closely gotten to know each other, but for our audience, I would love to get to know you personally and kind of your background. So you kind of have this duality, which I share in common, of the spiritual practice and also a medical background. Yeah. I'm a certified speech language pathologist, so I have a very medical mind, but very much so I'm delving deep into my spiritual practice as well. Yeah. So let's start with your medical practice. What brought you, and kind of what was your journey to finding your study of psychiatry?
Well, a lot of people ask me that, and to be honest, it actually started with something of a tragedy.
Okay.
Yeah. But when I look back on it, I realize that it was divine intervention, and this was the path that I should have been taken in the first place. I was in my my junior year of medical school, and this is where we were choosing our electives for the next year in preparation for that area that we wanted to go into, and I had chosen pediatrics, and unfortunately I ended up having a miscarriage about 4 weeks before I was to start all of these rotations in the neonatal intensive care unit. And and so I went to my advisors and I said, I just can't do this. This is just too raw for me. So I replaced it with what was my second choice, which was psychiatry.
Okay.
But again, I know that it was all divine intervention, because this is the path that I'm supposed to be following all along.
Yeah. And I know psychiatry also is a very vast field. Is there a particular population, or I know now you're kind of in the more spiritual, but did you specialize in school in anything particular?
Yeah, I initially specialized in child and adolescent psychiatry, and then I was working in Arizona. I lived in Sedona and was working with just an amazing population of indigenous peoples. I mean, just people from all over, and it was very eye-opening, because I realized that I really need to understand the culture. I need to understand the role of beliefs if I'm going to be effective. And the more I delved into that, the more I recognized that there's such an intimate association between what we believe and literally the life that we manifest. And that's what really started this explosion onto this path of what I call epigenetics, which is which is a science, a branch of science that illustrates how our thoughts and our beliefs actually can affect our DNA. It's just
so fascinating.
It's absolutely
wow.
It's mind-blowing when we think about it. You think it's like some science fiction, but there's all these research studies that are proving that there's an intimate association, because we're just that powerful.
Yeah, that's the word that came to my mind when you were saying that. That's almost empowering, that we have the ability to affect the life we want to create. And I know for myself, dealing with a lot of not only mental health diagnoses, but chronic illnesses and things like that, you can feel so helpless. And it can feel, I describe it a lot of times, I feel like I'm in the passenger seat in my own body.
Yeah.
And
That's a wonderful way of looking at it.
it's terrifying if you think about, you're on the road in this crazy journey of life and you're in the passenger seat. That's not, a very helpless place to be, but something as concrete and evidence-based as epigenetics teaches me. It's just like, no, you're in the driver's seat even if you don't feel like it.
Yes, yeah. And it's that consciousness shift when we come to that awareness that makes all the difference in the world. And to answer your question, if there was a branch of psychiatry that then started interesting me, it was what's behind all of what we call the comorbidities when we have, depression, but we've got a physical illness, or we've got anxiety and we've got something else going on. And, again, the more I delved into that, the more I realized, wow, we can really direct the course of things in our lives. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And so then the more spiritual side of your practice, I can imagine during that journey of going through school and getting into epigenetics, it does kind of teeter that line of spirituality. But did you have what kind of upbringing did you have? Did you have religion in your home? Were you raised? Was spirituality a part of your upbringing?
Actually, it was. And, probably like a lot of people, I mean, my parents were actually different religions. And I remember, like on Sunday mornings, we were supposed to, go to church, but sometimes we just didn't make it because they couldn't decide which one we were going to. And I'm like, even as a kid.
Yeah, but that's fascinating to be in a home that is open to, there's not one right way.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
But I laugh because, I mean, literally, I found it even as a kid amusing that my parents couldn't decide.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you guys are the adults.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
But and then
so you had some type of structure and some type of spiritual belief. There is a greater being. Okay.
Absolutely. And then my own life experiences too. I mean, even as a child, I was having like precognitive dreams, and neither of the religions could explain that.
Yeah.
And like most people or most kids, you go to an adult in your life and they tell you, oh honey, that was your imagination or whatever. And so and then we get older and we start wanting to fit in with our peers, and none of our peers are talking about the fact that I had this dream and then everything in the dream came true. And so we learn to kind of stuff that down, and so it wasn't until I was growing much older that it started coming back, and it started coming back with like full force because I started having a series of spontaneous past life regressions. Seeing myself in different timelines, in different roles.
Wow, that's hard to ignore.
Yeah, it really is.
It
really is. And so I have a lot of empathy, no pun intended, for people who are in this world. They're very intuitive, they're very empathic, and they don't know what to do with it. And so it's almost as if spirit just kind of really set up my life, or I know I had a part in it too, but that we set up my life to where, say in my psychiatry practice, I would get people coming in and they're talking about all these different anxiety symptoms, and I'm going, and then I start naming off some things that someone who's an empath would typically experience, and they go, oh, how'd you know that? So it was as if I were magnetizing this population of people to me, so that they could simply meet someone who would support them in not only the exploration of how to make their symptoms better, but also to understand what's driving them. To have a broader perspective in that this may not just be a biochemical imbalance, it may be, a manifestation of spiritual gifts. And so coming back to your question, that's another population of people that, I mean, that's my passion, working with people where we can take a physical experience or even an emotional experience, and we can really look at it through that spiritual or that intuitive lens to really define, well, what is the purpose of it? in your life right now? Yeah, what is the message behind it? Because when we can understand that, particularly if it's something challenging,
Yeah.
then once we understand its purpose or its origin, we've got the power to change it.
And accept it.
And accept it,
Yeah.
and accept it. So.
What a gift to all of your clients and future clients, that to have that very personal experience and lens that you're looking through. When, I know personally a lot of psychiatrists, they go down their checklist and, it does the job, but
It does.
to be able to offer that different perspective, I think is so beautiful.
Thank you.
So tell me about what you're doing nowadays. I know I read a little bit up on you that you are one of 5 leaders in the country that practices the Healing Angel Protocol.
Yes.
Tell me about, I am so curious. Tell me about that.
It's a relatively new modality. It was actually channeled by my mentor. Her name is Phoenix Rising Star. And it was channeled by her, I want to say 2018. And it kind of took what we knew about, I'll say traditional energy healing. Well, it is for me traditional because I know I've been a part of it this whole time, but it takes it a step further, because again, I was talking about epigenetics, which when we have an experience, we create cellular memory around it. Some of that cellular memory is incredibly positive. At other times, cellular memory imprints can create limitations and repetitive patterns in our lives, and that's whether we end up dating, say, a toxic person and then attracting another toxic person. Maybe we have these ups and downs in our careers. All of it we can chase back to what's called cellular memory, or there's another famous psychologist who terms these things upper limit beliefs.
I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, and either way, when these cellular memory imprints are part of our bioenergetic field, then they become our attractant factor. And so the amazing thing about this modality is that it's very personalized. What the facilitator does is become what we call a hollow bone of healing, meaning we become that vessel for source energy, particularly beings from the angelic realm. And so we call them in, and we can go as far as to literally tap into that person's time-space continuum and look at the origin of some of their current challenges. And when those are highlighted, because the angelic beings then inform us, the voice piece, if you will, when that's highlighted, they actually go to work in terms of healing that, and they counter all of those things that we're holding on to that are no longer serving us. They counter that with pure unconditional love. It is just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful modality. And
I got goosebumps. To be the cellular memory, that's just so visual to me. That something like a miscarriage, or something like maybe a sexual assault, or something that is truly life-changing. And I have a book here that the body keeps score, and it kind of maybe parallels that type of belief of our body keeps hold of traumas that we've experienced. But to be able to call in the angelic realm and take those cellular memories and give them love and give them compassion, so you can stop those repetitive patterns. And I just keep saying what a gift to be able to provide.
Yeah, it truly is. And of course, one's higher self is involved in that as well. And so it's so empowering. To receive a session or to learn this as
just
as
know
a
that it's
skill.
possible.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I think that that's my driving force, I think. You know, whether it's through the readings that I give, whether it's through the energy work that I do, it's providing people with that knowledge that, they have choices, you know, because the traditional world does not always stress that. And I want to, that's another veil I'd like to take off, is that veil of limitation.
And just the mentality of just tough it up, put your big boy shorts on, go to work, do your job, go home, take care of the kids, wake up, do it the next day. You know, living in this state of survival versus growth and thriving. And we talked so much on these lives and these interviews that I've done about raising the vibration of not only yourself but the community around you.
Yeah, and even raising the expectation for yourself. I mean,
ooh, that's good too.
Because I honestly think that, you know, I mean, granted, we can have losses, we can have tragedies, and we can grieve that. I mean, and the whole world is grieving right now so much. Yeah. But there are times too when our dissatisfaction, I want to say our dysthymia, which is it's kind of like a low-grade depression, if you will. Okay. Our dysthymia, or dissatisfaction with things, is because there's a quality of life that our soul wants for us, and the quality of life that we've been accepting, and the disparity between the two, we don't know how to handle that. We're not even aware of it until our soul says, this isn't right. So how do we know? We start experiencing that dissatisfaction. We start experiencing that anxiety. We start experiencing just all sorts of uncomfortable things. And it's I want to say, the language that our soul uses very often to get our attention.
What are some of those signs that maybe people kind of start experiencing that maybe they don't even know that that's what they're feeling?
And whether or not one agrees with my interpretation of the origin of
right
things, the symptoms are very real. I mean, we start questioning our purpose and our reason for being here. We start having changes to our sleep patterns, either sleeping too much or sleeping too little, in the sense where we have difficulty falling asleep, we have trouble staying asleep, or both, or there's even a third, early morning awakenings. We wake up, we can't go back to sleep, the mind just starts going. You know, obviously that affects, changes in energy. Even when we do get a good night's sleep, we still feel exhausted, which certainly then goes into our motivation to do things, to complete our tasks. It hits upon our interest, particularly in things that we formerly enjoyed doing, outings with our friends, intimacy with our partner. You know, when all that starts falling by the wayside, that's a big clue something's shifting. Difficulties concentrating. I mean, those are just a few of them. Not to mention the feelings themselves of sadness or dissatisfaction or chronic worry. To me, there's even just this kind of cyclical pattern we get in, particularly with so much uncertainty in the world. We start worrying about things, and that worry can become so pervasive that we get into a place where we start feeling like we'll never be free of the worry, which in itself is depressing. So, because there's been so many times when I've actually treated people for depression, the origin of their depression is the chronic worry,
I know one of I just have this very vivid memory in a time that I really was struggling, and one of the happiest places where I go is to watch sunset at the beach. And how blessed are we to live in this town that it's just, for me, a 15-20 minute drive. For others maybe it's a little bit more, but I remember in a time that I really was struggling, I went to the beach with my mom because she knows that's, what brings me joy. And I was just sitting there. It was the most beautiful sunset and the water and the waves, and I just wasn't into it. I just was just like, kind of just like, I want to, this is all right. I just want to go home.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh.
Yeah, you knew there was something.
There's something up.
Yeah.
That's something that typically just brings me so much peace. Just wasn't doing it for me.
Yeah, and this isn't just, sometimes we have a change in our priorities, we have a change in our interests, but this is more than that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was. And so what are, if you are starting to notice, for me, a moment like that where I'm like, oh, maybe I'm struggling more than just having a bad couple days, or the chronic worrying, the changes that you just mentioned.
Right.
What are some of the steps people can take?
Oh my goodness, and there are so many.
Yeah.
I want to say before I go into those.
Yes, sorry.
No, that's okay. Before I go into those, I think the key thing is to give oneself permission to take them. Because we live in a society that says, like you said, suck it up, or this isn't real. I mean, it's okay to talk about our diabetes and our broken legs, but God forbid we talk about our anxiety or our sadness, and that's a double standard that really shouldn't exist, because we do have those physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental layers of our energy field.
Yeah.
All of it is a part of us, and as they say, what we resist persists. So we can try stuffing these symptoms down. We can try ignoring them, telling ourselves that we're a bad person because we're feeling them.
Right.
And that only makes us increasingly more vulnerable to their effects when we ignore them. So
that's so true.
First and foremost, it's a stigma, and it's a double standard that just needs to go flat out. It just needs to go.
And I'll just tag on to that, that something like, these types of struggles and mental illness, not only are they just as real and just as valid as diabetes or a broken leg or something that seems very valid to most people, that you'd go get help if you broke your ankle.
Right.
Something like mental illness, if ignored, can start to manifest into those physical symptoms. And so it's like, we can devalue it, or push it away as, it's just a bad day, or I just need to suck it up. But it can manifest into those things that we do consider very real.
Yes, it can.
So by giving those thoughts value, by giving those experiences space to be spoken, space to be just even internally written down, is so important, like you said. So I appreciate you taking that step back and stating that.
Because we honor the contributions of our left and right sides of our brain.
Yes.
We when we are driving our cars, our batteries, they pull from two different cells, right, in our car. Why we think that we can have a wholeness to who we are by ignoring our mental health, it just baffles me. Yeah. I mean, we're loving, empathic beings, so why shouldn't we feel?
Yeah.
So, but when we do feel like something's amiss, I mean, these days, especially in light of COVID, there's so many options. I mean, there is this explosion of online help available, online therapy platforms. We can have interactions with psychiatrists via telemedicine. Certainly, being able to reach out to friends and family. The main thing is not to attempt to go at this alone. So, because it's in that sense of isolation that is one of the symptoms when we start withdrawing from the people who love and support us. And there's a famous psychologist, Herman Maslow, who developed what's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And
I was just listening to a podcast about it.
my
It was
gosh.
mind blowing.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's fine. Yeah, all of these synchronicities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, at the bottom of the pyramid are the things you'd expect. We need food, shelter, clothing, we need to be safe. We take care of the physical body. But, coming right above that is the need to belong, the need to connect, to have meaningful interactions. And so, why not take advantage of that? I mean, we need that in our wellness. We need that when we're struggling. So I do encourage people to reach out. I mean, and certainly there are all sorts of mental health providers, mental health clinics, community mental health clinics. There's just a whole plethora of opportunities there. But it's also about being very discerning. It's very much like when we tell people when they're going for a job interview. Maybe that person's interviewing you to make sure you're appropriate for the situation, but you're also interviewing that company to make sure that they fit your needs and values. And that should absolutely be true when one is choosing a therapist or any sort of life coach or mental health provider. It's an interaction, and it's got to be one that fits. It has to be in alignment with who you are and what you believe in. It's so key.
Yeah. And I think the act of picking up the phone and making the appointment, or going online and scheduling the first session, that in and of itself is empowering.
I believe so too.
Giving yourself that validation of my struggles are real and they deserve relief.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's I don't know where along the way in our growth as a society that we develop the shame around this. I really don't.
Yeah.
Because and I wonder, I look at all of the things that we avoid, and I look at the fact that energetically, typically, there's a fear around it.
Yeah.
And so, here and there, I've actually pondered, well, what is the fear, right? I know certainly people have the perception that if they're diagnosed with something, say depression or anxiety, like it's a life sentence. It's not. Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of who we are. I mean, we are so wonderfully made by our Creator that we have the power to heal. All we need is to be pointed in the right direction, to have the right tools, and the support that we need. And what we will do, if given the opportunity, if we even allow ourselves, is that we evolve. We evolve beyond the circumstance. We evolve beyond the symptoms. So, it's anything that we experience can be a temporary phase.
Yeah.
It can be a phase. So, so that's a fear that I want to allay in anybody who's listening. And secondly, going back to the study of metaphysics, when you think about, again, well, how is it that we manifest? We know the power of our thoughts. We know the power of our emotions, particularly when they're combined with an intention, particularly an intention that is for the highest and best of everyone involved. And with that, I mean, that is truly, truly powerful. And we're not just manifesting alone. We've got all of this seen and unseen help.
Yeah.
And so I think somewhere along the way we became afraid of our own power,
Yes.
And so it's that person who is credited with that phrase, it isn't failure that we fear the most, it's our own greatness. Right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because when you really look at it, we can do some amazing things.
I know I've also heard people express feeling comfortable in their sickness or comfortable in their struggle because it's all they know, and very fearful to imagine life being different.
Yeah.
And fearful of things being too good, or when is this shoe going to drop, because the shoe always just drops.
And unfortunately, that has been a pattern that a lot of people have lived, and that is even something that's addressed in epigenetics.
I was going to say those cellular memories that we get stuck on that circular pattern.
Yes, we do. And the way through it isn't to put up with these repetitive cycles of disappointment. It's to go back and heal the underlying disempowering belief, and that is what is so powerful about the whole field of energy psychology, which recognizes that yes, the psychiatry is valid, but so is the spirituality. It's the marriage of both, and that's primarily what I practice, so that we can go back and we can address, where along the way we came to this erroneous conclusion that, let me see, I'm gonna give an example. Let's say you're a person that's got a family history of some really, really bad autoimmune disease. Right? And everyone in the family has struggled physically. And then you come to this point where somebody tells you, well, there's a part of this that you can make better. They get to a point in their healing where they're good for a while, and then they have a relapse. They're good for a while, and then they have a relapse. And strict science will tell you, well, that's the nature of autoimmune diseases, right?
Right.
But from an energy psychology standpoint, what if you happen to be a person who isn't aware that you have this belief that, well, I've watched so many members of my family struggle with this. Here I am. I'm feeling good. I've regained my mobility. I can socialize. I can work. I can have meaningful interactions. This isn't fair to my family. Who am I to deserve this? And that is what causes us to relapse. It's the doubt about our worthiness.
Right.
Because it's almost a guilt, as you said, for feeling better. And these are the things that energy psychology can actually help us to deal with and help us to clear, where our beliefs can be inclusive, and we can have that empathy for our family, but we can also recognize that their paths are their own, and that the only being we can be responsible for is ourselves, and we owe it to ourselves to actually maybe even model physically, mentally, or energetically what is possible when we embrace all that we are, not the limitations.
I needed to hear that.
Great.
I just appreciate hearing that, and knowing that you both have that power within you, but you're not expected to do it on your own.
Exactly.
That there's a reason there's professionals such as you and those online therapists and resources in the community. There's a reason they're there. You're not expected to change these generational patterns on your own.
No, you're not. And there's so much help.
There's so much help out there. You touched a little bit before, and I think anyone listening to this will recognize there's a lot of struggle happening in the world currently. I think I read you've been practicing for 20 years, around 20 years now. What kind of pattern have you noticed? Have you noticed an increase in struggle, an increase in need for mental health? What have your observations as a practitioner been?
When I started, everything was so secretive. I remember my very first job. I didn't stay there very long because we could talk about spirituality, we could talk about belief systems in the context of that person's demographics, but we couldn't talk about it in terms of their healing. And
Okay.
one of the things that I had noticed, and this was an observation from one of my patients who had come to me from a traditional mental health clinic.
Okay.
She had said something like, "It's so very depressing there," and I thought, okay, she must be referring to the decor, these really yucky, colored walls or something.
Yeah.
But no, what she was referring to was the attitude of both the patients and the providers.
Oh gosh.
That once you had a mental health diagnosis, that you were automatically going to be a client there for the rest of your days, and that's that misperception that I talked about. And so over the years, I've seen us become more and more open to the possibility that not only are there other alternatives, there's other outcomes as well. Now, one of the things that we are struggling against is something that I find we can't get away from the trauma because of our social media, just because of the way our world currently works. I mean, it just, in seconds, we're connected with people all around the world, and we're privy to everything that's going on. I mean, it used to be that there was a time lag where we could at least take the time to process and filter some of the more challenging bits of news that we experience. Again, we are empathic people at heart, right?
Yeah.
And so when that's consistently coming at us, we start building that layer of anxiety, and it ends up to where I think the world is experiencing a degree of post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was just on a podcast about this about 2 weeks ago with a good friend of mine, and this is something, it's a project that's been near and dear to his heart. His name's Jeremy McDonald, but this is something that he really wanted to touch upon, to broaden that awareness of, number one, you're not alone if you're feeling like a little shell shocked, right?
Yeah. That's so important.
Yeah. But that's been a trend that I've been seeing, and so we're also, I think, being forced to emerge from the shadows. And that's where mental health has been. It's been in the shadows, and it shouldn't be. So that's been a transition that I've seen, over these few years.
Thank goodness. I know even just the generation between my parents and myself, going to see a therapist wasn't a part of their. It was a part of their options, but it was very like hush hush. It's something, I have an appointment this afternoon.
That's right. We can't talk about it.
No, we're not going to talk about it, and then maybe, someone, high school, college age now is just like, oh, you know what my therapist said the other day? Chit-chatting about their appointment that they had, and just even just that, those two little differences is huge. But coming back to normalizing, normalizing struggle and normalizing getting help to relieve the struggle.
Exactly.
And that we don't have to just ruminate in this this dread of unhappiness.
Right.
We can help each other find resources. We can help each other realize that it doesn't always have to be this way.
It doesn't.
Particularly in a climate that, as you called it, is in a state of post-traumatic stress, of the news blaring at us, the social media blaring at us. It can just start to feel so just overwhelming is the only word I can think of.
Yeah, it really can. And just as you're speaking, I think pretty much just about everyone, saw that headline, former Miss America.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes, and when things really start spiraling that far, I mean, we may never know, why she didn't reach out for help. You know,
Yeah.
what is it? The stigma, you know, the shame around it, and to me, that is something that we are doing to ourselves. You know, if we perpetuate that stigma and not honor the fact that we are beings capable of very profound emotional depth.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's a blessing, but when that turns dark, that's when we need to reach out for help.
And that's the hardest time too.
Yeah.
And I think the important part for me personally, and I hope others, that you go and you set up your team, whether that's a professional, whether that's a support system of family, friends, whatever. You establish your safety net, your support system before you're in that place of desperation.
That's it.
That you don't have to be at this breaking point of such overwhelming emotions that you don't know how to manage before you pick up that phone.
Right.
You don't have to be at your breaking point in order to receive help.
No, you don't.
Because I've been so grateful that there have been times that I've been very, very hopeless.
Yeah, I think we've all been in some place or another for some reason or another. Yes.
That's not the time that you're going to pick up and try to set up an appointment.
Yeah.
You know,
Hard.
it's
It's hard.
impossibly hard.
Yeah.
That when I've been there, I've already had a therapist, or I've already had my set people that I know they're going to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And they're going to listen to my darkness, and they're going to wrap me with love and tell me that it's going to pass and it's not always going to be that hard. That I want to emphasize that these resources are here and ready and welcoming to you before your breaking point.
That's true. That's true.
You don't have to wait for everything to be impossibly hard before you get help.
Yeah. And even, you know, sometimes things sneak up on us.
Exactly.
And, you know, we might be in a place where we're there before we know it.
Yeah.
I would say still reach out.
Exactly.
Because, you know, that stranger on the other end of the line
Yeah.
may be divinely placed. You never know.
Yeah.
But it can be the best thing in the world. And I know
Yes.
that actually is a possibility, especially with the isolation that the pandemic has brought, that it's been hard to cultivate this network. You know, I think that people are very lucky when they can build it beforehand.
Yeah.
But in those instances where they can't, there are still people available. There are crisis lines.
That's
all
very
over.
true.
Yeah, I mean, even just 911. You know.
Yeah.
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 You know? Yeah. So that we don't go to do something that we later regret, or the people around us, the people who love us, regret. And they're constantly questioning, what more could I have done? When because that's a huge burden to bear for survivors.
Impossible.
So there's all sorts of options available.
Yeah. And reminding that making that call, whether it's 911, whether it's a crisis line, is just as valid, like we said before, as having a heart attack and having an ambulance come do CPR. Our mind, our emotions, our psyche are what keep our heart running, what keep our blood pumping, what it's all one and the same. And you know, whether you're struggling with addiction, whether you're struggling with hopelessness, those things deserve help just as much as the heart and the liver and the kidneys.
Yes. Yeah. So, wow. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Yeah. So I know I have shared a little bit, and you've shared a little bit. I kind of just went around the store a little bit today and wanted to share some of the things that have helped me. That if certainly we welcome you to come into the store and receive a reading from Cynthia or any of our amazing readers to help get some guidance. But some of these resources that that personally have helped me, these two in particular, The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. I consider it one of my Bibles. I go back to it many times, and the philosophy of it I just think is so beautiful. Brené Brown touches a lot on giving our struggle a voice and making it valid, and by sharing your story, sharing your truth, that in and of itself heals. And whether that's to a therapist, whether that's to a friend, whether it's to a journal, that it's perfectly imperfect and starts not only your own healing process, but maybe helps heal others as well. The Body Keeps Score is also another one that I often just open up, and I also have it on audiobook. I think it parallels a lot of the cellular memory that you were touching on, that things such as trauma live in the body. And having, whether it's this type of spiritual services that you provide, I know there's EMDR that some therapists work through, but going back to that trauma and giving it love and giving it compassion allows you to move past and maybe work through these repetitive behaviors or roadblocks that trauma often creates.
It does.
So that one, and then just these other two, Your Body Is Not an Apology.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yes.
I love that one.
Yes, and this beautiful cover, it's so eye-catching. That the power of radical self-love, of loving yourself exactly how you are, whether that's your best day or your absolute worst when you can't get out of bed or you're truly struggling, and it's there's nothing to apologize for.
No, not at all.
We're all have been there and may be there again one day. So just that radical self-love. And Now Late and Beloved, Thich Nhat Hanh has this no mud, no lotus. And I just love the analogy of a lotus at the end of every day closes back in and gets muddy and dirty, and then the sun comes out and it opens again and it's beautiful and bright and clean. And knowing that if you're in your mud state and feeling dirty and dark, like the sun may not come out again, just know that that's part of the process.
It is.
You can't become this beautiful, bright, shiny flower without doing the work and getting muddy and turning inside and addressing that darkness and that trauma. And reworking, those memories in order to bloom again.
Yeah, that is beautifully said. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, these aren't my philosophies, but just some things that I've learned from some really beautiful writers. So we have all of these and so many more resources I practice and love using essential oils.
Yes, I do too.
I think I pulled these two. The frankincense is one of the highest vibrational oils.
Yes.
That to me has a nice earthy smell and can be very grounding and really holy almost. It was one of the gifts the three wise men brought to the baby Jesus. So it kind of helps connect me to the divine. So that this is just a little roller ball that anytime throughout the day I just need to get grounded and feel protected. It's a nice little reminder. Our senses are so strong in rewiring the brain and kind of exciting. I also pulled some peppermint. That is a very stimulating scent that I've heard people can help even get you out of a panic attack. Because when your brain is just so, this isn't medical advice or anything, but when you're in that heightened state, something such as this, your sense of smell, can help pull you out of it.
Yes, it can. In fact, that's part of one of the exercises we have people do.
Oh, interesting.
Is to really kind of, take stock of what they're sensing with each of the 5 traditional senses. Yes.
Yeah. What do name 5 things you see, name 4 things you feel, all of that. So peppermint sometimes is just a really stimulating smell to just kind of okay, nope, I'm here, I'm present, I'm in my body, this is what I'm smelling. And then the last little thing are just these worry stones. They fit really nice in your palm, have like a little indent in them, and I just like to rub the crap out of them sometimes. And you just keep rubbing, and it might be in your pocket and people don't even know that you're stressed out, but give that crystal all the stress and everything that you need.
Yes, and that synergy too of where you might be releasing your stress, but the crystal itself, which has its own consciousness, it provides an uplifting vibration as well. So again, the support that we have is everywhere, from the crystals in the ground to the angels, in the spiritual realms, and everything in between. So much out there for us.
You're not alone. I think that can kind of wrap up this whole conversation, is whether it's your best day, your worst day, you're not alone. No. There's help out there.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Cynthia, so much. She will be here till 6 o'clock today, as well as Denny. And so come in, get a reading, maybe check out some of these resources, and know that you are divinely loved.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.